All right, we're recording now, so we're official.
Official. Bona fide.
Yeah, if it's not on the internet, it didn't happen, right? This is how things work now. So.
Jennifer, what's your last name?
Roberts, R-E-R-T-S.
Got everything.
So,
Thank you.
so what did we do last week? Last week we were talking about mindfulness, which is something Buddhists talk about a lot, but I think we just got started, right? We talked about chapter 10 in the book. Before that, we were finishing up right effort. Now we're on right mindfulness, and so we talked about chapter 10 last week, and I assigned chapter 8 this week, but I wasn't really going to talk about it unless there's questions about it. I mean, it's just kind of a different take on meditation from our friend, Mr. Goenka.
Oh, I have a question. I do.
Oh, sure. Well, let's see if we can answer. By all means.
I kind of went down a rabbit hole.
Well, he's interesting.
Well,
Interesting
it has to do
fellow.
with suicide. I mean, I
Oh,
think no
okay.
religion
Was that-
or philosophy
I don't know if that was in the
promotes
chapter.
suicide.
Right?
But on page 115, he says, in a dead body or inanimate matter, there can be no sensation because the mind is not present.
Okay.
And then 4 pages later, on page 115, he said, should one commit suicide? No, that would not solve the problem.
Oh,
At the moment of killing oneself, the mind is full of misery, full of aversion. Now, how he knows that, I don't know. But
Assuming.
Whatever
For many
comes-
people.
For what?
For many people, perhaps. He
For
thinks
many
that might be
people,
true.
But I think that's kind of a blanket
No,
statement.
right. Yeah, there's this whole
That's not
thing.
a lot, so.
Anyway, so I'll let you go.
Whatever comes next must also be full of misery. How
Right.
can it be full of misery if what is next is death, when he just said the mind is not present in a dead body?
Right. He's talking about your next life. It's the stream of mental events goes on, as we carefully say in Buddhism. So that's what he's talking about. Yes, Buddhism has this thing, and it's sort of this obsession in Theravada with the last moment of your life, because in the Abhidharma, which is this philosophical superstructure that sort of got built on top of Theravada Buddhism over the centuries after the Buddha, that the last moment of your life is there's this connection to the first moment of your next life, and so all of your karma makes the leap there, and so there's this weird obsession with what's the last moment of your life like. I don't know if that's really reflected anywhere in the suttas. I think there's some scriptural reference for it, but yes, and so the last moment of your life is this big topic of conversation in Theravada Buddhism. I mean, I don't put a lot of store by it. I think your whole life also has an effect on things, But because of this sort of the way that Abhidharma thinks of it, that what happens is, you don't exist from moment to moment. Your sort of self-concept and structure is recreated many times a second. In every moment, you are like being recreated by your mind, and so all of your karma is, and everything about you is jostling along from one mind moment to the next, right? And so you get to the last mind moment, and that's usually one mind moment creates the next mind moment. Well, the last moment of your life, that's going to create the next life. And so the characteristics of that last mind moment, Theravadins often have this idea that has a big effect. Somehow it has a bigger effect than the whole previous part of your life. I don't know. Like I say, that doesn't worry me too much. I don't.
Okay, thank you.
I figure, your karma from every moment hopefully is jostling along in that bag from mind, or being recreated from mind moment to mind moment.
So we're not going to cover the chapter that I so diligently studied to read. I was going to be ready.
Does that make me a bad professor? It's okay. Well, I mean, like I say, it was a good chapter. I like some of the things he said towards. He describes his method very closely, and whereas the chapter 10 it was much more of just the traditional sort of mindfulness, aware of your thoughts and all that kind of thing, and how do you deal with all that. But Goenka, he's very much about the sensations of the body. His whole meditation technique is about really observing the body, and the mind is just sort of an adjunct to the body. That's really, the body is the central star in his meditation technique. And I think that's perfectly valid, because I feel like people a lot of times don't pay enough attention to the body. They don't learn to really observe the body carefully, and because the mind and the body are so connected, they're missing this vital piece, that helps you understand the mind. You can't understand your bad moods and your strong feelings and all that without seeing how they're interacting with the body, because they affect one another. I'm sure I've said this before, right? When you have a strong feeling, the body is tense somewhere, and when the body is tense, it tends to generate feelings. And so you have to have an understanding of both ends of that stick to really get a handle on it. To be able to calm the mind and the body, you need to be aware of both of them. And so I like his emphasis. Like I say, there's other things about Goenka's approach that I'm not as excited about, but just his style of meditation, I think, is very useful. You can try that very body-oriented kind of approach.
Well, see, when I carry it to the hyperbolic end, which is not every, he said every cellular process creates a sensation. No, I mean every little mitochondria that's creating energy. Am I really?
Maybe they help.
I just tend to overthink and overdose. Oh.
Right.
You have to defocus the microscope to 2,500 years ago.
Yes.
Well, and I mean, he from Goenka's point of view, you can have a lot more specific and clear and closer observation of the body than you think you can, and that's what he's encouraging you to do, is to try to zoom in with your microscope of mindfulness as much as you can.
And I am absolutely amazed how little aware I am of my body. I mean, I am so neck up that it's amazing. Right. Well, I have a lot of progress to be made.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's good dharma that's ahead of you there. Alrighty then. Very good. Any other thoughts? So, I wanted to make some general remarks about mindfulness, because what we've done so far is we went through chapter 10, an excellent chapter about meditation, but mindfulness is a big topic. Mindfulness, it was a start of the list of the 7 factors of awakening, right? The first one was mindfulness. Mindfulness is a big deal in Buddhism. It's sort of, in a sense, it's sort of Buddhism's contribution to meditation, because there was all sorts of meditation going on before Buddhism, but the importance of mindfulness and developing this mindfulness, that was a big emphasis of Buddhism, along with some other things, like how suffering is caused by craving and what that really means. That's also important. But so what's the deal? Right mindfulness. This is the one we're on. So mindfulness, as you know, is something that can be practiced at all times, in any situation, on the cushion, and in daily life, right? That's the thing about it. It teaches us to notice not just the things and the people and the situations and the thoughts that we fixate on or reject or ignore, right? But also to notice the feelings and the beliefs and the moods in our mind that bind us and prevent us from seeing things clearly, right? So your mind is more than just the obvious stuff. It's more than just what you happen to be thinking at this moment. The mind is in a particular state, and that state can be rather subtle, and we usually don't notice it because we're with the thoughts, man, just bing, 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 one thought after the other, and we're not looking at this background. And what mindfulness would like for you to do is to bring the camera back and look at the mental environment that all of these thoughts and activity is happening in. So, you're looking skeptical, but that's okay.
Is that the feeling tone or is it more than that?
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, we don't have good words for it, but we'll have some words for it here in a little bit. But yes, the mood, I always say. Yes, so we observe our mind like a scientist. There's virtue and morality and all those things in Buddhism, but when you're just practicing straight mindfulness, you want to observe your mind and withhold judgment. I mean, you may notice, oh, that thought is probably not so great, but that's not what we're about. You really want to just see, like you're watching the mouse run through the maze, and it doesn't really matter which way he turns. You just need to record your observations accurately, right? I mean, that's kind of the sense of where mindfulness starts, is you don't want to prejudge everything right off the bat. Yeah, maybe you're thinking thoughts that you don't think are so good, but it doesn't matter. We just want to observe. What are the thoughts? What are the feelings? What's the mood? What's happening? And we want to dig into it without cutting anything off prematurely, right? Don't optimize too early. That's what programmers say. That probably doesn't mean a lot, but anyway. Yeah, so we just want to say, anger is like this. You're just observing it. Wanting is like this. Dissatisfaction is like this. You're being a witness, right? And in a way, because I put everything in terms of parenting, because I raise some kids, but it's like being a parent. To me, when the parent sees that their child is angry, right, it doesn't help for the parent to get angry too, right? This is usually not a good a good way for things to go in my experience. So the trick here is that the part of the mind that can see the anger, that can observe the anger, isn't angry. And you may not believe that, but you need to try it out. This is something to test. The part of the mind that sees frustration isn't frustrated. And I didn't believe this, but then I did. It's like, oh dang. Buddhism was right, again. So it takes practice, right? That's what I'm saying. It takes practice to find that clear space that sees the suffering but is not experiencing the suffering, or is at least not in the middle of it, right? Like there's being under the freezing cold waterfall, and then there's just standing next to the freezing cold waterfall, and it's still pretty cold, and not so great, but you're not right in it, right? You can get a little distance there. That's what we're going for. That's how it starts. Back out of the waterfall. How in the Kung Fu shows, right, you stand under a freezing cold waterfall, that's part of your training, right? Seems kind of unhealthy. But anyway, so yes, stand next to the waterfall. Observe it. Permanent. Okay, so with mindfulness, we can face any experience with wisdom without fearing it or clinging to it. This is where we want to be. Because when you're not all mixed up in it, then you have a chance to let your more thoughtful, slower brain, take a look at it. and when you're not in the middle of the frenzy. Talking about mindfulness, being able to observe the part of the mind that sees the anger is not angry. That's what I'm harping on at the moment. Right mindfulness. Mindfulness helps us practice what is called vipassana, which just means insight, right? And so we talked about meditation is shamatha. We always say, well, we teach shamatha meditation. That's what we do. But there's the other side of that coin is vipassana. So when you're meditating or when you're being mindful, there's always two sides. When you're meditating, we want to calm the mind down so that we can see more clearly. It helps us back up out of that frenzy. And the point of being calm, or having a little calm space in the mind, it starts out, it's so small, and it's very weak, and it just goes away almost immediately, But as you practice your mindfulness, that calm, clear space becomes more stable, and there's more to it. And eventually you really kind of have this seat that you can sit on where you can be equanimous, right? You can have equanimity and things aren't pushing you around like they used to. This is the kind of thing that mindfulness can do for you. And that allows you to practice the vipassana side of it, to really see clearly without reacting, without getting all mixed up in it. Then you can really get out your mindfulness microscope, and really understand what's going on. You start seeing the layers behind things, I would say. So as we move mindfully through the world, we want to look at everything internally and externally with a Buddhist lens, right? That's what I always say. It's not just be aware. We want to be aware, but we want to have an awareness that has been sort of conditioned by our study of Buddhism. There are certain values that Buddhism has. So we're looking for the 3 marks of existence, right? Which are impermanence and
No self.
no self, right? And suffering in the middle. So anicca, dukkha, anatta, right? Impermanence, stress, and not self. So we want to have our Buddhist training nearby. Let's see. We want to set aside our usual snap judgments. So they cut off our ability to really understand. If you just assume you know what it is immediately, you're not looking anymore, right? So you have to keep an open mind with mindfulness. So there's the 3 marks of existence, and also just the 4 noble truths. What is your suffering being caused by? When you feel like you're in your pinch, you're feeling stressed or whatever, uncertain, look for the clinging, right? And you will generally find it. What are you clinging to? What expectation or whatever it is that you're clinging to that is causing you to stress? And to see that connection while it's happening, this is the key to the Buddhist method. We're not doing some kind of philosophical retrospective. Consider a person who is suffering. What is it like? No, consider you suffering while you are suffering. This is where you see. This is a real-time event, which is why your mindfulness needs to walk through the day with you, because it's when you're sitting at your desk and you get the phone call from your boss, that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where your Buddhism is going to be practiced. The cushion is just piano scales, right? We just want to have it ready. We know what mindfulness is, But you pick up the phone, deep breath. Yeah, boss, what do you need? See where it goes, but you're observing. Right. So suffering is caused by our ignorant craving and clinging to what we want. Craving, of course, includes its opposite, pushing away, that aversion. And just remember, when you feel like you just can't stand the situation, right? That I can't stand this anymore feeling, you're very close to seeing dukkha in its native habitat. Look for that. Our minds are constantly finding objects to cling to, right? Whether we like something or despise it, we get stuck to it, right? It hangs around in the mind. Craving tends to drive us from one obsession to the next in an endless cycle. And as our understanding of craving and clinging deepens, we realize that we need to let go of one thing after the other. When you look at these things closely, you realize that you're squeezing it so tightly is not helping you. Maybe it is something you need to deal with, but being white-knuckled about it, usually not helpful, I have found. You have a little more nuanced grasp anyway. Lighten up just a little bit. Because if you can just squeeze less tightly, that's a little bit of spaciousness. That's the beginning. You can't let go of things immediately. As Ajahn Amaro says, 80% of the practice is knowing you need to let go, but you can't quite let go of it yet. But you're aware. You realize that you're clinging too tightly. Yes. I'm preaching now. Why do we practice? Why do we practice being aware of the breath? The way I teach meditation, it's about you're training the mind. This is your mental gym here. We're training the mind, we're strengthening the mind, we're developing mental discipline. We train our attention to stay where we put it instead of just jerking us in random directions, right? And so why are we doing this? We need this discipline to calm the mind, to make it serene, so that our internal state, our mental objects, our thought processes can be seen clearly. Once the mind has some clarity and isn't full of just deafening random noise, You might not have experienced this, but this is how I lived my whole life up until Buddhism. Deafening, random noise. This is the environment that I just felt like I was living in. You know, once you can have some clarity, you can really start to listen to the mind and observe it. We watch without judging or reacting to it. We watch it without thinking more thoughts about it, right? We are the wise scientists, silently observing. We begin to see the mountain of garbage that has randomly collected in our minds from all the things we've heard and experienced from childhood up until now. And it is a lot in my experience. We have so many reactions and whatabouts and wherefores and this is like that's that from all these things that have happened to us. And it gets in the way. You know, everything's colored by our past experience, so we're not really just seeing it simply for what it is at that moment. And we see how the habits of thinking we've picked up poison our moods, our thoughts, and our emotions. And ultimately, of course, we're going to see, Buddhism says, that there is no self at the center of all of this activity. That you peel away the bark. If you peel away the bark of a banana tree, I think that's the metaphor that's always in the sutras. You peel it, bark, 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 and finally you pull off the last piece of bark, and that was the whole tree. There's nothing there. It was all bark, you know. And so, anyway. So one thing you might think is that mindfulness might sound kind of dismal. You know, like it's going to be this thing that's just going to weigh you down for the rest of your life as a Buddhist, you know. I mean, because, you know, when people take things, it's like, okay, you know, the can-do American attitude, I'm going to do this, you know, rah, hoorah. You know, it makes it sound like maybe you're just going to start clamping down on the mind, that you'll be badgering yourself all day about everything you're doing wrong. But it's really, mindfulness is the opposite. What mindfulness is really, well, I'll just say that you'll often start out thinking that your mind is a mess because you're noticing a lot of craving and aversion and all the other hindrances. People often find that when they start meditating, they realize just how much junk is in their minds, and they might feel worse than they did before. I mean, this is a typical new meditator experience. It's like, I really am crazy. I wasn't just imagining it. But that phase passes. You know, you get used to noticing even more bedlam than you might have thought already, that there was plenty of bedlam, but now it's even more. The closer I look, there's more of it. But you get familiar. That's the thing. We're getting familiar with it. We're not rejecting it. We're not upset about it. It's not a problem. It's just, this is the way we are. My crazy brain is like this, you know. And eventually you move from just trying to avoid getting trapped in the hindrances and all that stuff and bad moods to noticing and encouraging, right, the awakening factors, right? Every now and then you noticed a little sliver of calm, a little sliver of open, pleasant clarity, right, might drift through the mind. You need to notice those moments because the things that you look at, that's the things that you're feeding, right? The things that you obsess about and pay attention to and all of that. And so if we want to have these more clear and open states of mind, we do need to notice them when they happen. And this is another thing that can only happen in the moment. You can't just read about this in a book and philosophize about it. No, you have to see that little bit of spaciousness that might seep through in the middle of your hectic day and say, there was 2 minutes, you know, or 2 seconds, you know, of clarity before I thought about the thing that's going to happen this afternoon, you know, whatever, you know. It's like, it really is in there. You think your mind is just always the same, right? It's like I'm just always had it with XYZ, you know, and it never changes, and I'm just always unhappy about it or whatever. That is not true. There are plenty of times during the day when XYZ is the furthest thing from your mind. You're calm, relatively content, but it's like, but as soon as you think about it, oh yeah, what about XYZ? You know, dang, I'm really still mad about that. But you're not always. It comes and goes. Everything is very impermanent. Your moods are always coming and going. You just don't know it because you're not watching. You know, and you can play like, you know, teachers will recommend all these games, you know, like Thich Nhat Hanh said, you know, whenever the telephone rings, just before you answer it, just take a breath, check in. What's going on with me? You know, because you can't control when the telephone rings. It'll catch you unaware. Of course, telephones don't read it. So when the text, when you get the text, we have to update. When you get the text, and back when I actually drove around everywhere all day, I had a little sticker on over my speedometer, that said breathe, and whenever I came to a stop sign or whatever, I just take a moment, what's going on with me? What's mood am I in? What's happening? And a lot of times it was just kind of blank, just kind of chill. It's like, oh, everything's okay, right? I'm not caught up in all the things that I think are a problem all the time. So, anyway, where I'm at. You can use your mindfulness and investigation, right, to raise your energy, to invite in joy, tranquility, calm composure, equanimity. Listen for them, is what I'm saying. Just like when the kid listens for the voice of their parent, right? They can pick it out, either to go behave or to ignore it and move further down the playground. It's like, oh, mom's over there, whatever. But you notice your mom's voice, your dad's voice. So notice when these good moods float by. They were under the radar before. Get them on the radar. Okay, I'll quit belaboring that point. Maybe. We'll see. Right, so your mindfulness, your recollection should be focused on the states of mind and behavior that you want, not what you don't want, right? Because both the Dhammapada and all the New Age gurus, will tell you that you get what you concentrate on. You at least get the state of mind that you're concentrate on, that you're attached to, that you're looking for, that you're listening for, right? That the mind the mind follows your lead, right? You have an intention, and the rest of your mind is just like, what's important today? Well, the mind is thinking about this. Well, there you go. Let's invest some resources. So your intention, your attention, and your intention are everything in this process. You get more of the states of mind that you notice more, that you pay attention to. As I said, the mind always has these threads and glimmers of both the poisons, greed, hatred, and delusion, and the enlightenment factors, joy, tranquility, and equanimity. They're always all there all the time, right? You're not used to looking for them. You assume that it's just whatever you think it is. And at first your mind is drawn more towards the poisons, right? Those are the sticky ones. What do you want? What are you unhappy about? Those are such a good emotional charge, we're just addicted to it. It's like, yes, and you can be addicted to negative feelings, I assure you. And it's like the reason you keep thinking all these unfortunate things and just around and around is because that is what you want to think. Because as bad as it feels, we like the energy, as crazy as that sounds. If all you can think are more bad thoughts and less bad thoughts or whatever, sometimes the more bad thoughts, that's got, you at least, it's kind of like who you are, right? You define yourself, people define themselves by what they hate. This is an unfortunate truism about human beings sometimes. But as you learn to notice the enlightenment factors and pay attention when they float by, the balance will start shifting. Right? And of course, this is just all internal. When you're out in the world, when you have an opportunity to practice the Brahma Viharas, right? Goodwill, compassion, sympathetic joy, equanimity, you want to do it whenever you can. Our wholesome states of mind, right, are sustained by wholesome acts in the world, right? So those are helpful. Right? So we're only good because it helps our meditation, right? This is the Buddhist joke. So, right, so back to children again. Children learn better when you catch them doing something good and praise them for it, right? We're no different. They want more of the praise, It's like, oh, mommy said I'm doing a good job, You hope your children are like that. Sometimes things go awry. But, and if you're constantly haranguing your child about their bad behavior, what do? No, they're not listening. We're training our minds to value the good states of mind, virtue and kindness. But we need to see our faults with clear eyes, right, and recognize our weakness. That's the non-reactive part. That's accepting everything we see without judgment. But, So we're not constantly punishing ourselves for our faults. A lot of us do enough of that already. We want to keep our attention, what we're listening for, on the goal. And the other thing I'll say is that a Buddhist should regularly reflect on their own virtue. This is one of the 10 daily recollections that Buddhists do. And we won't go through the other 9, you can look them up. But one of them is, because people don't think that's a good idea. It's like, well, if I think about the things that I've done that are good or whatever, it's like you're breaking a rule or something. It's like, why not just get a big head and be all stuck up about it? And maybe you're already thinking all day about how great you are. But that is not the experience many of us have. We are not thinking about how great we are. We're just constantly going through our list of failures. Well, I didn't get that right, and I forgot that, and they weren't that happy with that, and no, stop and think. What did you do? You did these things, whatever, even if your day was very uneventful. You got these errands done. You did this thing for work that needed to get done. It's like, these are your virtues. Or even what you didn't do. It's like somebody was in a bad mood, and I didn't just blow them off. I was actually slightly concerned about them or whatever. This is virtue. Hold on to everything you've got. You have to start somewhere. It's like, there's the great story of Angulimala, who was a murderer, a mass murderer, and he eventually became the Buddhist disciple. And he said, the monks will all say, oh, as long as I've lived, I've never harmed another being, or they have all these kind of things about, reflecting on their own virtue. And he's like, I can't say any of that. And the Buddha said, Angulimala, I think I'm saying his name right, probably not. Just say, ever since I entered the path, I have been virtuous. That's right, I haven't killed
I frequently say that. I haven't killed anybody today.
I haven't killed anybody this morning. This is where I'm starting. I'm planting the flag. Right, and so, you can just say, maybe there are things that you regret a lot, but at some point in time, you have had a reasonably virtuous day. And so you need to reflect on that. Because what we reflect on, we're feeding it energy, this idea that we can do the right thing, or at least not do the wrong thing. I mean, begin where you're at, I did not extort money from anyone in the last hour and a half. I'm feeling a little virtuous about that. So, don't dismiss, just the normal, everyday, getting along in the world things that you do. That is your virtue. That is part of your virtue.
Now, picture Tony Soprano trying to be a Buddhist.
Exactly. Now I can't think of any of their names. Such great names. Anyway.
From the show?
Right. I think. Oh, well, it won't come to me. That's okay. We won't get off. Well, let's not get distracted. Yes, reflect on your own virtue. Okay, and what do we got? It's 5 after. Okay, we'll say a little bit more general comments, and then we'll talk about the foundations of mindfulness, a classic Buddhist teaching that we will be talking about today and next week as well. And so I always think, things don't exist in isolation, and I've always been sort of an amateur psychologist. So I like Jung a lot, Jungian psychology. And so I always think, well, how does Buddhism relate to all of that, right? Because, as the Sufis say, there is only one truth that covers all. Somehow these things have to be related. And so these are just my amateur observations that I'll put out there just because I get to sit in the chair and talk. To me, Buddhism is the way that you can train your conscious mind, but we are also training our unconscious mind. And there are plenty of Buddhist theories that kind of go along with this. I really didn't just make this up, But it's like our conscious mind, right? That's the part of the mind its job is to navigate in the world, right? It knows what your schedule is and what's happening with 5 minutes from now. That's what the ego structure, that's what the conscious mind is doing. It's keeping track of the little details of the world because the unconscious mind doesn't have a direct connection to any of that. But what that means is the unconscious mind depends on the conscious mind to sort of set the direction. The unconscious mind doesn't know what to do, or it doesn't know which way it should push if it's going to help or hinder, without knowing what the conscious mind is up to. The conscious mind understands what's going on in the world and sort of sets the priorities, and the unconscious mind can respond to those.
Is that like setting your intention? Is that what you're
Right,
talking
yeah.
about?
Setting your intention, or what are you thinking about most of the time? See, this is where mindfulness comes in. If you don't know what you're thinking about most of the time, and many of us really don't, we're surprised to discover how much or how little we're obsessing about XYZ by start learning to check in regularly. It's like, I've been thinking about that all afternoon, or the thing that I thought was so important, I hadn't been thinking about it all afternoon, and the unconscious mind, all it knows is what the conscious mind is thinking, right? It's not looking out through your eyes. It's seeing what's the conscious mind is concerned about, right? Like I say, this is all armchair amateur psychology. Please pay it no mind. Do not base your investment decisions on anything I say, right? So, right, but I mean, you do train the conscious mind is always training the unconscious mind. Like, how much do you have to think about driving a car? Right? Well, when you were learning to drive, you were obsessed, It's like, oh no, how do I get through the intersection? There's too many cars, But now it's like, you don't even notice when you get there. It's like, what happened? Oh, I guess I drove here. The car's in the parking lot. I must have driven here, right? So your unconscious helps you a lot, and so it picks up on these things that you do regularly and, brings it down to the brainstem, right? And this is what Buddhism needs to happen with the practice, right? Mindfulness can, and looking at your virtue, these things can settle down into the brainstem, and become just sort of automatic, the way you see the world, just the way you move through the world. And so with mindfulness, when you're actually paying attention to what's in your conscious mind, that lets you set your intentions more clearly and consistently. So that the unconscious mind starts having this clear set of priorities. Because usually when your mind is just a muddled mess, that's all the unconscious mind is getting to, right? It's like, well, he's just full of random worries, So we'll support his random worries by giving him an ulcer, right? That should help, right? Isn't that what he wants? It seems to be what he wants, So, anyway, that's enough of that. I will say, though, as the Dhammapada says, nothing can benefit you more than a well-tamed mind, right? And nothing can harm you more than an untamed mind. So mindfulness is a great tool to help bring the mind into alignment with your real intentions, right? Philip Moffitt talks about live by your true intentions, right? I think something like that. Okay. So that was like a whole sermon just about mindfulness in general. Do we have any thoughts before I?
Oh, well, I do. One thing is the mindfulness, the breath, coming back to the breath, coming back to the breath, coming back to the breath.
Right.
The more I practice that, starting not to be judgmental, it's like, okay, I'm here for 30 minutes, and about 10 seconds of that, I was actually on the breath.
Right.
But then at what point do we then go to that reflective side, or is it we do it, or do we do it simultaneously? I'm asking as someone, as a beginner.
No, right. That's important because I brought it up, but I didn't explain what you do. Right? There's shamatha and there's vipassana. So, right. But what it is, it's it's kind of like sometimes when you're on the uneven road, you have to kind of turn the wheel one way to stay in the middle, right? And other times you kind of turn the wheel the other way because the grade is the other way. And so this is something that you learn to manage for yourself, right? Because the goal is eventually that you are your own teacher. And so you know what your mind is like. If your mind is just hopping around all over the place, shamatha is the way to go. If you feel like, well, I can think about, whatever, I can do some vipassana kind of stuff for about 2 seconds and then it's gone, probably just stay with the shamatha, stay with the breath, see how long can you sort of follow the breath all the way up and all the way down. You can tell how well you're able to keep your attention on how well your attention has learned to stay where it's put.
And I guess my question is, when is it good enough to then fear and take your hand off the wheel?
I mean that's going to vary. You know, for some people it's a matter of weeks. For some people it's a matter of months. For some of us it's a matter of years. You know, I started meditating every day in like the beginning of 2010. And it was somewhere around 2012, 2013 that I started doing something other than just, you know, watching the breath and doing metta. Metta was also a big thing in there for a while, the first couple of years, you know. But so, yeah, for me it was like year 3. I kind of started going off into these other, you know, other Vipassana-like topics.
I was going to add that it kind of evolves by itself in my experience.
Right, that's true.
And that is, there may be some very, you know, structures and rules and so forth. I never received that type of instruction in terms of like, now I'm switching gears to reflection. You know, it's more like, part of it is just getting really bored with the same things over and over again.
That's right.
And then because you're not feeding the feedback loop, if there is a subconscious that's got a mission or something like that, it loses steam and you naturally settle down.
Right.
By naturally settling down, you'll just like, oh, there's that again.
Well, you start seeing your mood, right?
Yeah,
you start seeing more subtle.
Yeah, and it doesn't bother you as much, so it becomes more like, wow, and then you'll notice maybe sometimes, oh, I kind of get this when I'm stressing out about there's something going on here and it's coming like that. It's kind of like, oh, if you keep track of your dreams or you're kind of a dream person, you would say, yeah, I kind of dream this way at certain times and other ways, but it's mostly like the space that happens, and then you'll kind of get the vibe of what's coming up. It's not so much Jungian or, you know, like trying to unpack content.
Like our author said, don't psychoanalyze yourself.
Yeah.
That was not the point.
Right. It's
You're
not
just
the content,
observing.
it's the energy, you know, and it's a dream, you know. Thoughts are just, I've heard lamas say that thoughts are nothing but dreams.
That's right.
They come from the same, they don't say this, neurologists will say, neuroscientists say that thoughts actually kind of originate in the same place that dreams do.
That's right.
But we do have a mediator of just being more awake when we're awake, but that's why you can probably be talking to someone and just something like, why did I flash upon that
Right.
that rude thing or that,
Surprise pop up.
you know, it's just like, it's all going on, but there may be an analytic part of that, I don't know, but for sure, you start noticing the shapes of those thoughts.
Right.
Much more clearly than if it's a rainstorm of thoughts.
Right. So you naturally, well, that's what I was saying. It's kind of like which way, sometimes you need to kind of pull the wheel one way and sometimes the other. It's kind of like as your shamatha gets better, right? It's just a matter of emphasis, right? You always notice the thoughts that come by as you're doing your shamatha, you know, but you're not able to really spend time with them because things are going by in a quick and jumbly way. But as they slow down, it's like, well, now something will stay more than 2 seconds. I can really kind of, what does this really feel like? You're able to answer those kind of questions for yourself, you know. But yeah, so it's just a feeling. When things are sitting more stably and are easier to observe, then you naturally observe them. So yeah, that's just emphasis. They're two sides of the same coin. They're not really two different meditation styles. You're just focusing on one or the other, sometimes more.
How do you say the word that starts with a V?
Vipassana?
Vipassana, and that means
Insight.
Insight.
Insight meditation is like a direct translation of the Vipassana Baba or something.
So an experience that I've had once or twice over the course of 5 or 6 years is that I'm meditating, watching the breath, not thinking about anything particularly, feel relatively calm, and then a solution to something just appears.
Right.
I mean, I wasn't thinking about it.
Right.
It had been bothering me all day, but
Right.
it's just, oh, that's why he did that. I'll do this. Everything's fine. Is
Right.
that Vipassana, or is that just my
Well,
intuition answering a problem for me?
I don't think there's that much difference.
Okay, okay, fair enough.
Right?
Fair
Because what happens is, there's several things going on here. One is that there's one side of Vipassana where you're getting more familiar with the thing, right? It's sort of sitting in your mind, and you're really feeling it, man. You know, and you realize that this thing that I thought was just anxiety, there's really kind of a tinge of sadness to it, and I think I see where this is really coming from. So there's looking at the thing, but then there's also just having a clear, spacious, calm, non-grasping mind. This is where there's room for like your wisdom to come bubbling up. And you don't expect it, right? Because this is a resource in your mind that you might not be that familiar with, because it has to kind of thread its way through all your other jumbly thoughts. But when there's this big open space, it can just kind of float up, and suddenly you think, oh yeah, that thing that I was trying to figure out last week. It's exactly that, because there was just room, there was your
That's what
energy.
it felt like, yeah.
Okay. So that's a part of it too, right? There's the knowing things intimately, and there's also the spaciousness. I would agree. Both of those are important.
I'm ready for that to happen more, by the way.
Right.
I would like
We
more
all
of that.
need more of the good insight. All right, so what's the deal with the foundations of mindfulness? In the Pali Canon, right, which is the Theravada scriptures, the Buddha actually didn't talk that much about the nuts and bolts of meditation. It's kind of like there was a lot of people meditating all over the place, out at that time in ancient India. It was a very sort of well understood practice that a lot of people did, and so it's not like they had to keep introducing the concept or whatever, and so we don't have things like we got with chapter 10 last week, where somebody just carefully walks you through it methodically. They may not have even taught it that way. We don't really know. But there are some sutras about meditation, and there's two particular that are very important. And one of them is called the Foundations of Mindfulness. And there are 4 of them. So we will talk about them. Yes, indeed. List number 47 to go on our chart. So yeah, what's the deal with that? So the Buddha's talking about this meditation practice, and it starts out near the beginning. This is the only way, monks, for the purification. I'm going to read a little of this to you so you kind of get the flavor and ease you into the Pali Canon. This is the only way, monks, he's addressing these monks, for the purification of beings, for the overcoming of sorrow and lamentation, for the destruction of suffering and grief, for reaching the right path, for the attainment of nibbana. I mean, we're covering the ground here. It's like, this is it, namely the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Now, there are a number of things that get introduced as the way to nibbana, so this is not unique in that sense. He's just saying that this is generally going to be an incredibly useful thing for you. So the 4 foundations of mindfulness. What are the 4? A monk abides observing the body as the body, dedicated, completely aware and mindful, without feeling greed or aversion about worldly things. So what's he saying there? The body as the body. So this sounds like our friend Goenka, right? Just focusing in on all the sensations of the body. The Buddha didn't teach body scan, but it kind of approaches that in some places. But now that's the way we think of it. You start at the head or the feet and just go all the way through very slowly, very carefully, feeling all the sensations in all the parts of your body. That's how we might approach body in the body. That's just a more modern technique that we've kind of tacked on. If you're a purist, you can, whatever, I found it very helpful. Body scans, that is, to kind of get used to to that, looking at all the parts of the body that we usually don't notice. So, okay, so where am I? Observing the body as the body. And he says, without feeling greed or aversion about worldly things. That tells you that this is not necessarily a beginner practice, right? You already have some distance between you and the world. Of course, these guys, they were monks. They were out in the middle of the forest. They had physical distance between them and the rest of the world. For us, it's kind of a psychological distance, right? This is where that calm shamatha kind of mind is kind of how we think of this in the modern day, that you really need to really focus on these foundations of mindfulness, the way it's talking about here, for it to really have the intended effect, the mind needs to be pretty calm already, and so this, the Theravada tradition doesn't really talk about shamatha as preparation, but the Tibetan tradition does, and I think they're right. This is the way EBS teaches meditation. It's basically the Tibetan way. And it made a lot of sense to me. It really helped me. So you need to be pretty calm to really be able to, I recommend doing body scans no matter how crazy your mind is, because you're getting familiar with the practice, and it does help. But what he's talking about, this deeper practice, there are prerequisites for really to have all of the effect it can have, Observing the body is always good, but when the mind is calm, it's going to be better. That's all I'm saying. So observe the body as the body. One abides observing feelings as feelings. The second one, and I'm going to explain these. And the same thing, dedicated, completely aware, mindful, without feeling greed or aversion about worldly things. One abides observing the mind as the mind. What does he mean by that? We're going to talk about it. Dedicated, completely aware, etc., etc. One abides observing phenomena as phenomena. This is the translation that I don't like, but we're going to talk about that. Dedicating, completely aware, blah, 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 same thing, So you're observing four things that an English translation of them is the body, and that's pretty, rupa is rupa, that's the Sanskrit word, right? But then this feelings, what do we mean by feelings? The mind, what do we mean by the mind? And phenomena, that's very abstract, So, but we got to talk about what each of those mean. One abides observing, so that's his introduction. There's these four things. So, what is the deal? Okay, now see, I've already said all these things that I wrote down. Blah blah blah. You have to be, have a pretty calm mind. Okay. So what's the deal? So body, that's the body. That's not very hard to understand. So feelings, when the Buddhist texts say feelings, they're translating a very specific word, and that word is Vedana, Vedana. That's what Buddhists mean by feelings. And Vedana, it's not like emotions, like, oh, the love of my life is going away to Europe and I won't see her for a week, Or anyway. Vedana, a feeling, this is a very fast thing that happens as soon as you perceive something. There's this book called Fast Brain, Slow Brain. And the fast brain part of it, they're talking about Vedana, they just happen to touch upon this Buddhist topic. Well, they didn't know. So you see somebody that's your friend, you get this sudden feeling, right? You don't have to think about it. It's not, anything conscious. You didn't mean to think it. You just, it's my friend Bob. This is a good thing. I find this pleasant. This is the feeling that's attached to it, but it's without words and it's instant. It's like the taste of the experience. Or, you see that person you don't like, it's just this immediate kind of, it's like you don't even remember their name yet. And you're already, this slight tingle of dread, it just kind of drifts through. It was an instant response. That is Veda. Or just most things in the world are just neutral. Like I'm walking along and my foot steps on a stick, right? And I felt it, but I didn't care. I didn't almost trip. It's fine. No big deal. Just this neutral feeling. And we tend to ignore those, that neutral feeling, that to us, that just means no feeling at all, because we like the highs and the lows. That's what our mind is attracted to. So we don't notice all the neutral things that happen. It's like right now, you can feel the clothes sitting on your body. You're all dressed, right? Okay, so we're good. People on camera, don't turn your camera on if you're not dressed. Right, but but that's just an extremely neutral feeling because we're very used to it, and so we ignore it all the time. And that's okay. I'm not telling you have to start noticing that you can feel your glasses sitting on your face, although now that I've said it. Maybe I need to get these adjusted. Right, so most things are just neutral, yes.
How did you spell that word?
Vedana? Vedana?
Vedana. I was
Yes.
just looking in the back of the index, it's not in here, so I was just curious.
Right. Right. So it's that first hit. Every sense experience, anything you see, touch, taste, smell, whatever the other one is, and think. Every thought has a little Vedana attached to it. These thoughts that, if you're just in the middle of working through something, it's not really a new thought. But a lot of times something will happen or it just happens randomly, So you'll think of something and there'll be this kind of feeling tone to it. Pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. It's like, oh, the report that I did great on and I got really a good reward. See, I was in a different direction. So yeah, everything has everything. And so that's what that word means. And I've also sort of explained a lot of what that's about. You can tell what it is that point of mindfulness is seeing that little feeling tone that comes with every single mental event. Everything that comes in through the senses or the mind has some feeling tone, many of them just we hope, many of them just neutral, that you're not always freaking out all the time. But anyway, so that's Vedana. That's what feelings means. And so mind, this is even stranger. Oh, and it's almost time to go. Well, that's okay. I have one. We're probably not going to cover what I was going to cover in the last class, but that's okay. We will cover that last topic, but it'll be later on in the course. That's okay. You'll be all right. So I will mention that the word mind, I'll just to say, the word that they're translating is Citta, chitta. And in the Pali Canon, in the sutras, it has a fairly specific meaning. And I'll just say it's the part of the mind that's more intuitive. The chitta does not use words. So it does not use concept. It does not use pictures even. It's this part of the mind that's more like, think of it as the mood. Or it's where these impulses and inspirations might come out of, but the chitta is silent. So we're not just talking about the mind in general. This is a very particular layer of the mind, and this is why you might need some shamatha, because it's a little subtle. It's hard to notice that background mood until the mind is somewhat quiet. And so that's why this is considered a more advanced technique to really get a sense of this chitta thing that's going on. And then the fourth one, I'll just say, a minute over, the fourth one, phenomena, the word they're translating is Dhamma. And I wish they would just say Dhamma, because people are like, oh, people don't really know what Dhamma means. Teach them, Don't just say phenomena. That does not convey the flavor of the fourth foundation of mindfulness at all. It gets translated as phenomena or mental objects. But what they mean by Dhamma or Dharma, I always say the Pali, now, cotton in the mouth, right? So what they say Dharma, because Dharma means exactly what they want it to mean. Dharma has several senses, but the two big ones are, Dharma is obviously the teachings, right? We always talk about, it's a Dharma talk today. Oh, that Dharma talk was terrible, Let's not go to him anymore. I hope you don't say that, but you can. It's okay. But Dharma can also just mean the ordinary, everyday, just natural way that things are. And there's a word, the specific word a lot of times is dharmata, and that's actually the name of Anam Thupten's organization. It's Dharmata, or however you want to say it. Dharmata. But that just means ordinary, everyday. And so what's the deal? We can talk about, how can this word mean like the most deepest, mysterious truths of Buddhism? It shouldn't be mysterious, eventually. And also just every day, that's just the way it is, man, Sometimes you step on a stick and you do foot slips, and man, life is like that, just totally ordinary stuff. Dhamma means both of those things, and so by looking at the Dhammas, we are looking at ordinary things in this world, but through the lens of the teachings. That's really what the fourth foundation is about. And we will talk in much greater detail about all four of these next week. So, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Coming by. Good to see you. Good people on Zoom, thank you so much for hanging in there.
Thanks.
We'll see you next time.
Yeah, thank you.